Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown, and back in for a little more Spooktober action. And this, some brand new Spooktober action. Now, before we get going, I have to apologize. I know there are some of you that were coming to the channel today because we were going to dive into Scream. That was going to be our October 22nd movie. I had to switch it with this one. Somewhere, I must have read a wrong release date or something. I had this movie that we're going to talk about scheduled for the 29th. It dropped today on the 22nd, so as you can see, we've readjusted the schedule. So I apologize to you Scream fans. You're going to have to wait another day. We'll hit Scream tomorrow on the 23rd. But today, I wanted to dive into this one because it just dropped on HBO Max, and it's pretty freaking fantastic. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into the 2020 remake of The Witches. And that's right, I say spoiler-free because it literally just dropped today. And I know that many people are familiar with this story. Many people are familiar with the original film, which this movie sticks fairly close to. I can't say that I've read the Roald Dahl book, so I don't know how close it sticks in regards to the book in that matter. I do know that the original film changed the ending, and this movie also has tweaked the ending from the movie. So I don't know if this ending is closer to the book's original ending or not. Either way, this movie looks, feels, and screams like The Witches. There are so many wonderful nods to the original film. Some things that are ripped right off of that script page, man. Like, you will be sitting here and just have moments where you will just smile because you're like, nailed it. That was nailed. Nailed it. But Zemeckis didn't go for a word-for-word remake of the original movie. He added in some tweaks, and the most obvious of those tweaks is changing our grandmother and boy from a white family to a black family. And I said this when I saw the trailer, genius decision. Octavia Spencer is gold all the time. That woman is never not on fire when she's on screen. And the idea of her playing the grandma in this movie made me just so happy. But if you're going to change the race of our main characters, you also have to change that perspective. You know, you're in the 1960s, so the perspective from the black perspective would be different than it would be from the white perspective. And Zemeckis does a genius thing here. He brings in Kenya Barris. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Kenya Barris, the man has been a writer on Blackish since day one. He wrote Grownish. He wrote Black AF for Netflix. He did Girls Trip. This is a guy who knows how to write for the big screen and the small screen, and obviously would be able to give you that perspective. And I think that was a genius move because I think that perspective is nailed. Yes, I know, I'm a white man, but my family did infant foster care for years in New Jersey, and my first little foster brother was a little black boy named Ayonde. And eventually he got placed with his grandma, and long story short, grandmother, very southern religious black woman, was so appreciative of what our family did, asked my parents to be his godparents. That don't ever happen in foster care, but needless to say, I now legitimately have a black grandma in my family. And I gotta say, Octavia Spencer reminded me so much of Grandma Thelma. It was ridiculous, and from that perspective, I'm saying that they nailed all that stuff. From you know her religious nods. You know, she brings up God and you know the fact that some challenges and things. I mean, spoilers: our boy loses his parents, and you know it's one of those things where early on in the movie he's struggling with that and like is just kind of like just non-existent to the world. And you know, Octavia Spencer has this wonderful moment where she kind of breaks down like, look, this is something that everybody has to deal with. It sucks that you have to deal with it at this young age. I think he's like 6 years old. But God, you know, works in mysterious ways, and he presents challenges and things to all of us in different ways. And she has a couple moments like that throughout the movie, and it just so adheres to what I personally know. And it just felt very, very authentic, where I was like, I love the race bend from the get-go, and it fits really, really well with that type of a story that they're looking to tell. So I think, like I said, genius move by Zemeckis to bring Barris in to make sure that you got that perspective right. Now, the other thing that Zemeckis did here that was also genius is this movie tends to be a little bit more scary, horror-y, I think, than the original Witches. And yes, the original High Witch was terrifying. Angelica Houston's makeup costume design for the witch version of herself was horrifying. But you need to have those horror elements in there, and you bring in Guillermo del Toro to write and produce on this movie. He's one of the masters in the world of horror, and you can totally feel his fingerprints on the design and the look to the witches, specifically the Grand High Witch, played by Anne Hathaway. And while they don't go for the full body transformation that they give Angelica Houston's character, I think the design and what they opt to do with the witches this time around pays off in a different way. I think it's super creepy, and I think it also allows Anne Hathaway to be way more expressive than Angelica Houston could have ever been underneath all of that makeup. So by allowing it to be less prosthetic and makeup and more Anne Hathaway's face with these creepy little tweaks to it, I think it allows her to just have a better performance overall. And while I wanted to see the full body transformation, I'm not mad at what we got. So when you look at that stuff together, I think from the story, like I said, this is very familiar to the original version, and it feels very accurate to the type of story that Zemeckis is playing. I really like the script, I like the story beats, I like the places that it went that were slightly different than the original, but still holds true to that story. The other thing that I really like that Zemeckis does in the movie are the visual effects. The mice are the most adorable things ever, and they so capture the personality of the characters that are voicing the mice, which happens to be two kids, our hero boy, Jazir Bruno, who's fantastic. We'll talk about him in a second. And Cody Lee Eastwood, who plays Bruno Jenkins. Also fantastic. But our third mouse, Daisy, voiced by Kristen Chenoweth. I was like, that's not a kid. Whose voice is that? And then I saw Kristen Chenoweth. I was like, oh, yes. And she's fantastic. But the way that they're able to, grasp, the personality of all of these actors inside these little digital mice that are running around, I thought was just perfect. And, the looks to the mice, which I kind of said in the trailer reaction, feel kind of similar to the puppet mice that they used in the original movie. So I thought that was really cool. Then you got the look of the witches. And obviously, the big change that we've seen from the original movie to this one is the scarring on their faces. And, at one point I was like, oh, maybe that's how they peel the skin off. There is no skin peeling. We don't necessarily see a complete true form of the witches. This time around, rather than it being a complete disguise, the witches do stay kind of in a human form, and their noses and faces and things kind of change based on certain things that they're doing. But the look of the witches, and like I said, specifically the Grand High Witch, Anne Hathaway's character, I thought was phenomenal. The way that those scars on their faces play into the movie, really cool. And it played really well and ties in quite well with some of the wardrobe choices and certain things that we see from the witches in the movie. It totally fits the look of the character based on some of the other things that the witches are using. But I loved that stuff, and I loved the way that they made their hands have claws. They have 3 claws on their hands. I thought that was kind of cool looking, and they really make at least Anne Hathaway terrifying. I could have used maybe a little bit more of some of the other witches getting involved, but they really... This is almost like a 3-person show for the most part. I mean, it's all about Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, and then Jazir Bruno. Those 3 really dominate the entire movie. But the look and feel of the witches, they're scary, man. There's a point where Anne Hathaway is trying to sniff out where the kid is. That whole stretch, I was like, that is some really creepy visualization, but also extremely accurate looking to a witch. So across the board, I just think that Zemeckis has the look, the feel, and the execution of what you wanted out of the witches. This movie's got a lot of fun, especially once the mice start plotting against the witches. The back and forth is great. The back and forth between Octavia Spencer and Anne Hathaway is wonderful. And at the end of the day, I think this is a really, really good remake. And so much of that obviously has to do with the cast that we've mentioned a few times already. First and foremost, Jazir Bruno, wonderful. Very similar to the original movie. He is just nails the post-traumatic trauma of losing your parents in a car crash. The way he just kind of zones out and just isn't really present at all, I thought fit so well. And then when, Octavia Spencer's grandma finally does break through to him a little bit, has that conversation that we were talking about, you do see a shift of a little bit more of his personality, a little bit of confidence, but he's still, is kind of like a timid, shy kid until put in a situation where he's got to be the hero. And from that moment forward, very much like the first movie, he is the hero. He's got all the ideas. He figures out how to do things. And just voice acting wise, like really shifts gears to being a mouse. And the way that kind of plays into the story and where it goes down the line, you end up having a ton of fun with his mouse. And like I said, the personalities that are reflected through the animation, I just thought was really, really good. Now, obviously, we have Octavia Spencer, who plays his grandma, and I've already said, she's brilliant. I mean, there is nothing that Octavia Spencer touches that isn't pure gold, and it's the same here, man. Like I said, she's got everything that I personally know, about a black grandma from the South. Just nails all of it, man. I mean, the way that she uses cornbread to get in, with her grandson and help him start coming around. Things like that. Stuff like music, different things that she uses, just trying to get him to come out of this trance that he's in, more or less. She nails all that stuff absolutely wonderfully. And the whole movie, whether she's reacting to the kids turning into mice, whether she's helping them, whether she's showing down, and facing off with Anne Hathaway, everything they asked Octavia Spencer to do, brilliant. Now, we do also have, an older version of our boy voicing the movie over, and that is, of course, done by Chris Rock, and classic Chris Rock stuff. I mean, there were literal moments that made me laugh out loud just because of the inflection and the delivery of what he was saying. It was just so classic Chris Rock, and it fit perfectly with the scripting. So I loved having his VO in there, and there's a nice little bit at the end with his character that was like, that's cool, and I like the look and feel of what they did with that. Then, of course, we have Anne Hathaway playing our Grand High Witch. She is phenomenal. Like, I was a little hesitant, with the idea of Hathaway diving into kind of one of these crazy accents. She nails it. Transform it. Like, you forget that you're watching Anne Hathaway on screen. And the way she can have that, ridiculous accent perfect, as far as the execution of it, and then shift to like her true witch voice. Some of it gave me goosebumps, man. Like, she's scary in this movie, and that's not something that I've ever personally associated with Anne Hathaway, and I just thought it looked like she had a ball playing this character, and it just all shines through in a way that like was really, really awesome, and I ended up enjoying her a lot more than I had anticipated enjoying her in this movie. I thought she was brilliant, and shout out to homegirl. There's a shot of her from like the back at one point, and I was like looking at her triceps and arms, and I was like, damn girl, you've been in the gym! Like, like legit. Like, call me crazy for calling out the arm, but Anne Hathaway's arms looked phenomenal in this movie. Like, it looked like she could throw down as well as use magic powers on you. But I really, really enjoyed her performance. I thought she was brilliant. Like I said, Kristen Chenoweth plays Daisy, the white mouse that we see in the trailers. She's great. Again, smaller role, but has just really wonderful, classic Kristen Chenoweth moments. Cody Leistwick, who plays Bruno Jenkins. Just, you couldn't have cast anybody better to play that character, especially with what we know from the original. I just thought he nailed being that chubby little British kid, and I really enjoyed his VO work as well with the mouse, and how again those personalities are reflected in that animation. And then last but not least, Mr. Stanley Tucci. He's the manager of the hotel. Very, very small role, certainly in comparison to Hathaway, Spencer, and Bruno, but really, really good. I mean, he's having a ball with the southern, like Louisiana type accent that he has going on. You can just tell that he also was having really fun on screen, and I love his moments with Anne Hathaway and the way that she just kind of dismisses him continually, and his moments with Octavia Spencer where like Octavia Spencer just quick to put him in this place that she can keep going and doing the things that she's doing. But Tucci, as per usual, executes across the board. And at the end of the day, I really dug this remake of The Witches. I thought it really worked, and even the ending changing from the original movie. Like I said, maybe it's closer to Roald Dahl's book. I don't remember. But I loved the last 5 minutes of the movie. I was just sitting there yep, I'm about this, and I would totally watch a TV series about the end of this movie. You watch it, you'll understand. HBO Max, hit me with an HBO Max The Witches series, because I would be here for it. So there you go, man. Those are all the Seaman's non-spoiler thoughts on The Witches. Robert Zemeckis and everybody here just absolutely knocked this one out of the ballpark. And if you were a fan of the original, I think you will extremely enjoy this new take on The Witches. It is both classic and updated in ways that I think just work so well across the board. So those are all my thoughts on The Witches. Now I know what you're thinking. We watched the original Witches at the start of the month. Here we are toward the end of the month with the new one. What'd you think? Did you think that they captured the essence of what we know that movie and story to be? Did they adapt the Roald Dahl stuff better if you read the books? Did you think the casting and different choices and story things that were in the movie that were different this time worked versus the things that they made nods to? Did those work, or did it just kind of fall flat and not where you were hoping for? Anything you're thinking about The Witches, down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Seaman the rest of Spooktober, and you haven't yet, come show a little love, support for the old channel if you like what we're doing here. Jump over there, hit that subscribe button, come join the Seamaniacs, and hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace. You guys are still here? You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.